When a parent sends their children to school, they expect the school employees that their child comes in contact with is looking out for their child's well-being and there to help improve their education, as written in the school's mandate. And I quote, "Welcome to Crestwood Middle School. Crestwood Middle School's faculty and staff will devote themselves to ensuring the future, a generation of productive, balanced, and resourceful citizens. We do this by creating an instructionally stimulating and safe learning environment, and by lighting the fire of passion for peace, justice, and academic excellence in each student. We will assist Crestwood students in finding their individual strengths and guide them on the path to success in their future endeavors." But sadly, these words appear hollow. This is especially true if you are the school principal. On May 21, 2015, Bailey McDaniel was pulled from his class for reportedly being a distraction along with another student by Principal Nance. They were taken to the school administration office. What you are about to witness is based on two things. First, a written report by Principal Nance to School Police Officer Jay Farrell, and the actual fisheye overhead video from the school. As you will see, Principal Nance's written account appears to be an over-dramatization, and we ask the question, why is that? Side note, the following is an audio reenactment by a female voice actress reading Principal Stephanie Nance's written student discipline referral as dictated to the school police officer Jay Farrell on May 21, 2015.
At 1:40 p.m., I reported to room 1116 art class, as it was reported by the teacher that there were students who were refusing to adhere to the class rules. As I approached the room, the teacher, Miss Johnston, was standing at the door with two students, one of which was Bailey McDaniel. The teacher, Miss Johnston, began to explain that Bailey was refusing to follow the class rules, and specifically was attempting to argue with her because she, Miss Johnston, would not allow the student to leave the classroom. I escorted Bailey and the second student to the office.
The following video is a fisheye view of the admin office as Principal Nance, Bailey McDaniel, and an unidentified student walks into the office. We pick back up with the female voice actress reading of Principal Nance's written student discipline referral as dictated to School Police Officer Jay Farrell.
Once we arrived at the office, I instructed Bailey to take a seat. Bailey refused and proceeded to go to the counter to pick up the phone. Bailey was instructed by the principal to take a seat. Bailey began to talk back to both me and Miss Blank, secretary, in a loud voice. I informed Bailey that his inappropriate behavior and disrespectful tone would not be tolerated. As I was saying this, Bailey proceeded to jump up out of his seat. Bailey became confrontational with me. Student began flailing his arms around and began yelling at me. I proceeded to walk away. Mr. Pascarillo, assistant principal, intervened and directed Bailey to cease and take a seat. Bailey refused and was redirected several times to cease the inappropriate behavior. Even after being redirected, Bailey attempted to argue with office staff and talk loudly in the office.
It's important that we take a moment to put Principal Nance's statement under the microscope. As we stated earlier, Principal Nance's statement appears to be an over-dramatization of what we see in the video. Even though the video is void of sound, it doesn't appear by Bailey's body language that he was talking back to anyone. By the way, we're not exactly sure why Principal Nance referred to herself in the third person. It's odd, to say the least. As you can see, Bailey walks calmly back to take a seat, and after picking up the piece of paper he placed on the coffee table, he sits down. It doesn't appear that Bailey ever said anything as he walked back to sit down, but the fact that Principal Nance states Bailey was talking back to her and Miss Blank in a loud voice. His body language shows a disappointed kid who was denied use of the office phone to call his dad. Notice how his head and shoulders drop in disappointment. Principal Nance's statement that Bailey jumped up out of his seat and became confrontational is definitely not supported by the video. In fact, Bailey stood up after Principal Nance invaded his personal space. Principal Nance's posture toward Bailey is as you would see a bully do in order to intimidate their prey. Take note that Bailey didn't jump up out of his seat, but stood up with his hands in the air and backed away from Principal Nance in apparent fear. I want to stop here and point out Webster's dictionary of the word flail. Quote, to move or swing your arms or legs in a wild and uncontrolled way, or to strike or hit something or someone in a wild and uncontrolled way. Webster gives examples of flail. Quote, "They were flailing their arms to drive away the insects. He was wildly flailing about the dance floor." So I ask you, as I replay that part of the video, where exactly is this flailing of Bailey's arms? And why was Principal Nance all up in Bailey's face to begin with? And later, as Bailey retreats, why is it that Principal Nance assumed an even more confrontational posture by pointing her hand in Bailey's face? I'm pretty sure this is not a part of the administrative principal guidelines or the Department of Education guidelines on how to handle any student in any state. Imagine having two adults, head administrators at the school, bully you just for trying to make a phone call to let your dad know what was going on. Bailey's dad, Morris McDaniel, arrived as soon as possible. Mr. McDaniel has contacted the area superintendent, Frank Rodriguez, to inquire about an investigation into how Bailey is being treated by Principal Nance and some of her staff at Crestwood Middle School. Sadly, Mr. McDaniel has run into a wall of misinformation and made up allegations against Bailey as well as himself. There's more to this story, and we'll continue to update it as it proceeds from the classroom to the courtroom.